It's not a Tesla, so there's no 15-inch touchscreen in the middle. Singapore's transition to sustainable energy from ICE cars, internal combustion engine cars, petrol and diesel, to electric vehicles depends on many people coming on board, working together. This isn't just a Tesla only thing, as you've seen a lot in this channel. So today, I actually have the privilege to speak with a company homegrown here in Singapore, been here for many decades with a storied legacy, starting their early journeys selling internal combustion engine cars and now making their transitions to EV. And I have none other than Edward Tan, who is the Executive Director of Hong Se Group, to share his company story and to learn more about him. Good meeting you, Edward.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Edward, tell us more about yourself.
Hey, thank you very much. Well, I'm a young new kid on the block. Been doing this only since 97. The company's a lot older than that. Motors was formed in 1982. That was because the managing director, Mr. Alfred Tan, had a passion for cars and could not stop enjoying cars. So one day he woke up and thought, let's write the Ferrari, let's see whether we can get the agency, and let's start. So we started from there, and voila, we are here today. But we have changed our business profile from when we started. When we first started in 1982, we were doing car leasing, and we were also doing Ferrari. We were doing it from Maranello concessionaires. Then later on, we were direct with Ferrari. The first car that we ever sold, ICE, to coin the term, the small little red car that's very expensive, that costs as much as a house, were Mondials and Ferrari 308s. And we actually have here a last third generation iteration of the first car that we sold, which was a Mondial. And this is the third and final last version of it, which we still keep on to today, just to remind ourselves of where we have come from. So early in the years, we started with Ferraris. They were not exactly easy cars to sell. We had to go and learn how to do it, and later we progressed to the brands of Maserati. So Maserati was something which was also close to our hearts because we had to put in a lot of effort into it. Just like Ferrari, when it first started, nobody knew what was a Maserati. When Ferrari started in the 80s, nobody knew about it. We were selling 6-8 cars till when we had a change of mind and we left Ferrari. We were doing something like about 80 over cars a year. Then came Maserati. We also did the same thing. We built up the brands. We learned ICE. We learned the technology behind it, and we did it to the best we could for the manufacturers. It was an amazing journey. We learned so many things. In fact, I remember that when I was straight out of school,
Yes.
my first job was basically being sent to Mill Valley, United States, and I had a short internship down there. Why? Because at that point of time, the president, Luca Montesemano, had an idea. Since you're coming into the business, where better for you to go and learn, since you've been in Army, than one of our own dealerships. So I was sent over to Mill Valley, learn, understood, tried, see what it is like, and then came back to Singapore. So that was the start of my automotive career. Never looked back. I enjoyed it, no regrets, loved it all the way. But now, I think in the modern day future right now, I think we are starting to progress away from ICE cars to electrification, not only for a maintenance or construction point of view, but also for the better of the environment. Well, I have now got a wife, a beautiful wife. I've got a 2-year-old kid. I want them to be able to enjoy the rest of the world better than what I or we could enjoy in the past. So the only way to do that is not destroy the environment that we're in and try and enjoy, preserve, and better it for the future, because they're the next generation. So they'll be here long after I am gone. So let's leave the next generation with something sustainable. So now on to what we did.
So every story, every journey has a beginning. I'm going to be behind the cameras right now as we hear from Edward and his clear passion for cars to learn about how they started first with the Ferraris and Maseratis and going on to the EV transition. Edward, if you could start with this Mondial behind you, could you tell us, for those of us who are not as familiar, like some of the key highlights of this car back then?
Well, two cars which were sold by us pretty often when we first started. First was the Mondial, which is always close to our hearts because this was the first car that we ever sold. Mondial 3.0 to a very nice gentleman. In fact, he was a doctor. He took care of the car, loved the car, enjoyed it, and we're still friends up to today. Father did that sale. Okay, I was a little bit too young at the point of time. So the Mondial was the first car that we sold. The regular car or Ferrari that was often sold at that point of time was a Ferrari 308, which we still up to today still keep one pristine example, which was Ferrari factory restored and certified.
Edward, with the world transitioning from ICE to EVs, what is the future of supercars like Ferraris, Maseratis, McLarens?
I think because supercars in general are small volume, they will still stay pertinent, especially in the classic car collections. You cannot remove those manufacturers of supercars or phase them out. They will evolve, they will still stay in a supercar segment. The classic cars will remain, and we need to find the skill set of the mechanics who are still able to continue to keep them alive. We think that supercars in general will always be there. You look at the product mix of all the vehicles. You have everyday cars, you have sports cars, you have supercars. Supercars will be there. They will evolve. They will change from ICE to electrification, whether they like it or not, even though the history has been on ICE performance, but they will evolve. They definitely want to stay in the game.
What's your take on the Tesla Roadster?
I like it. I would like to have it. Now would be nice, but it's not ready yet, so gotta wait. But because I've been a petrol head for so many years, I still enjoy driving cars like that. The idea of performance, handling, it's there. You definitely will enjoy it. The lack of sound, never mind. I think the lap times would probably put a bigger smile on the face rather than hearing the sound of the exhaust.
Hongse Group has been known by many car enthusiasts as a luxury, a supercar brand as well. Would you consider in the future maybe bringing in some Tesla Roadsters as well to Singapore?
Well, I know we've ordered 2 already for ourselves, but let's hope Tesla brings them in themselves. If there's another electrified sports car brand out there which is coming up and the economics make sense, we would definitely love to be part of it.
Ferraris and Maseratis have been a part of the business for many decades, and eventually you made the transition. Tell us more about what happened next.
Well, we always know one thing. The other thing which people would often ask is, what do you think is happening? What is real? What's not? What's a quote? Change is always going to happen. Nothing is permanent. So evolve. So we were doing Ferrari and Maserati. That was what everybody knew us to be. But things change. We evolve. The businesses evolve. The future might not be ICE all the time. There could be a newfound, world out there for us to explore and discover. Technology goes ahead. Therefore, after we parted ways with Maserati, we were looking and wondering exactly what to do. It's tough. What do? You've got technology which is all based ICE, but what's the future? Is ICE going to be there all the time? There were little tinklings of electrification coming along, and the company which at that point of time made the most amount of buzz was here. So Teslas. So in 18, so we started doing our leasing and sales of Tesla automobiles as a grey market importer into Singapore because we believed it. Tesla's not so easy to work with when you are a grey market, so we had to learn the ropes of it very quick. We had to learn electrification, and because of that, learning more about electrification, we also set all our staff for IMI certification, so everyone is trained to understand what is electrification, battery operated systems, and safety. So 2018, 2019, we started bringing Teslas. The Model 3 today is the Tesla that you see, you know, you hear, you see tons of it, you understand exactly what it is. But before Tesla Model 3s were more available in Singapore, we were bringing in the Model S's and the X's because these were what was available. They are very comfortable, very nice cars, and this started our move to electrification because we tried it, we tested it, we believed in it, it felt right.
And can you tell us a little bit more about the types of buyers for your cars back then?
The start of selling Teslas was unique. You always had, I would say, captains of industries, people who are new, who are go-getters, people who want to try something different, people with a little bit more spirit, some people who are more interested. They want to try something different.
What interested your customers in getting a Tesla back then?
Well, first thing, electrification. So the go green story, which is true, which is there. Everybody liked that story. Number two, after you've tried the delivery of power and the drive sensation, it's totally different from IC. I still step in both worlds. I like IC because that's where I started, which I will never forget, and that's how I started. But the future is electric. So the drive, what the car can do for you, how it drives, the technology inside the car, it tells you if there are pedestrians walking around, the comfort, everything using the touchscreen to go and operate. In my case, I was driving the X, so of course the nice Falcon doors that had a very nice sexy appeal on it. Not to mention the car was large and very comfortable and still gave the same performance boost. I remember driving it just across the border, and the car was actually performing very well, even when you think the size of a Tesla X is not exactly a small vehicle, it's pretty large. Performance was very, very good. Yes, it's a little bit expensive. Yes, taxation was higher at that point of time because we didn't have the rebates the government was giving, but the smile on your face when you try it was good. And even up to today, we still like driving our performance, Model 3 performance around, and it's comfortable, it's good, it gives you a sense of safety and security. Some people might beg to differ, but in all things in life right now, I think try and then you'll understand and you can form your own opinion. After exploration with Teslas, Tesla sells their cars and vehicles direct, as everybody now knows in Singapore. So we came up with a lease to own program so that we can allow people to have the cars and not be so worried about how to purchase them, what happens after 5 years, 7 years, 8 years, because we will take them back because it's a lease. So that got some people more readily and easily available into the Tesla cars. So that was our start. We tinkered with it, we learned the system, we fell in love with electrification of vehicles. Then one day we were thinking, what to do? This is not a sustainable business, this is for a while, so we needed to bring in brands of ourselves or be dealers for an electric vehicle that was here. So naturally, the search started. We needed to go and find something for ourselves. Then came this particular brand here, BYDs. So they're distributed by Singapore Technologies. They're the importers. We're one of the 2 dealers in Singapore, and we learned with them more about electric commercial vehicles because it's something which everyone can use on a daily basis. We started researching and realizing that although we started out in passenger cars, maybe it's not quite where we should be right now. As we used to say, you got to learn, you got to think and find out. So learning is something you should always try to do. So we started out, we learned about this particular vehicle, the T3, and with Singapore Technologies, we started selling these as one of their 2 dealers, and it has been a very good run of T3s.
Here to show you the BYD T3 Electric van. This is the van, it's a commercial van that Hongse Group will be selling and focusing on in the years to come as we transition from ICE cars to EVs. And actually commercial vehicles are much better suited for EVs as well. They should be the first ones to transition because the utilization of commercial vehicles are much higher than private passenger cars. For private cars, we're using them on the road about 5% of the time. For commercial vehicles, they tend to be used 10, 12, 14 hours a day. Let's take a look at this EV. You can see from the outside that it looks actually not very different from a normal van. So this is a single motor van. You will actually see the motors in the front trunk, and it's definitely a higher vehicle because it's a van. So down here, you notice from the signage that electric vehicles, especially for commercial purchase, they've got a $30,000 cash rebate from Singapore government. So net price of buying this vehicle, net of the certificate of entitlement, is about 80,000 Singapore dollars. The most compelling reason for getting a commercial EV van is the cost savings. Every year, you're going to save about 6,000 Sing dollars in fuel, petrol costs. You take that over a 10-year time frame, that's $60,000 in fuel savings. Now let's take a look at the interior. I'm going to go in the driver's seat and the camera will follow us from the passenger seat. So now we have the vehicle turned on. So you can see the interior is pretty straightforward. Nothing very different from a normal car. It's an auto car, single transmission. It's got most of the buttons you'll find in every other car. It's not a Tesla, so there's no 15-inch touchscreen in the middle. So not everyone likes touchscreen, and especially for commercial van drivers, this may be a better fit for most of them. The BYD T3 electric van has a range of just under 300 kilometers. And if you have a full load, you can see behind, there's actually a lot of space to load goods. Having a full load, you'll have a range of, in real world, about 240, 250 kilometers. That's not too bad. Singapore is a small urban city, so you're going to find chargers more conveniently. I think the big challenge right now is just charging time, especially for commercial vehicles. This car has both AC and DC charging. So DC direct current is faster charging. It charges in 1.5 hours for full charge. So something that drivers could use during the lunch break or during a shift change. But still, it's not 5 minutes in a petrol station and that's it. So over here, you can see this is where the chargers are, EV chargers are in the front. You've got both AC and DC charging over here. So you just have to open the 2 front sockets. One on top and one in the bottom. So front charging slots, whereas the charging slots for a Tesla is behind. So one of the biggest challenge for EV charging infrastructure is how do we make sure that the cables are long enough for every single EV? Because all their positions are not standard. It's not like petrol cars where most of the fuel tanks are in the back left. So we close this. Now let's take a look inside the front. So you can see down here, that's the battery. And there is no frunk like a Tesla, it's a little bit different, but you've got all the key components over here. So you're not going to store any items in here because there's already ample storage space behind. So that's what it looks like in front. An EV, no engine. Voila! Lots of storage space, exactly what you need for a van. So hope you enjoyed this tour, this short look at the BYD T3 electric van. Expect to see more of this in Singapore, especially as the country transitions from ICE vehicles to EVs. I think when you think of different fleets like Singpost, Changi Airport Group, SATS for food delivery, the DHL, the FedEx, they're going to want to transition all their fleets to EVs. And so whether it's a BYD or any other brand, this is going to help our country achieve its 2030 Green Plan goals.
After that, we decided that we also needed to look for vehicles which are similar yet different. So the T3s of one particular size, So after that, we found ourselves with DFSK and Series, two other brands. They produce electric commercial vehicles. And if we look at this particular board, the specialty of DFSK, it's the #1 selling electric commercial vehicle in China. So by making that model, it's a fantastic opportunity for us to try and to do it well with passion that we have, something different. We have already tried and started with the T3s from electric commercial. We want to go to the next level. I need something else at the next level. I believe in it. This is something which will work. Why electrification? Because it's clean, it's green, and most important for the end user, it lowers the cost of operations. By reducing your cost, more businesses can save money and the bosses can make more money. We even did a calculation that if you use this new version of DFSK, you can save between $78,000 and $80,000 over an 8-year period by simply changing your vehicle to an electric commercial vehicle. You ask, yeah, sure, why, how? The reason is because the operational costs of such vehicles are so much better. You save in fuel, which is energy, so the cost of fuel, which is diesel or petrol, versus electricity is very different. The next thing which is very interesting is because you are not running an ICE engine, your maintenance is a lot lower. And we all know that commercial vehicles can run 150 kilometers a day, 200 kilometers a day. They are on the road all day long. They put in so much mileage, it's scary. If you put that kind of mileage on a regular car, I don't think anyone's going to buy your car as a passenger car. So by having a commercial vehicle, operationally costs lower, reliability, because we ourselves and the factory have combined together to give a very good warranty program. The battery's warranty up to 8 years, you got 5 years on the drivetrain, and you have a 2 to 3 years comprehensive warranty on certain parts. So the vehicles have a comprehensive warranty for you to utilize and use. And this is our DFSK EC35. So very similar to the T3 where we started, but it's slightly longer. So it's got one of the longest lengths internal you can find on an electric van. Another point to note about electric vans is what we carry is the EC35 and the T3. They can all be parked overnight in season parking for HDB because there are a lot of other vans out there. If you purchase it without checking the specifications, you might realize that it's a little bit too big or is a little bit too heavy, and not everyone's going to tell you that. It drives like a van. It's still got 2 pedals and a steering wheel and a gear selector, so it's a van.
The benefits of getting a commercial EV, especially these vans over here, the BYD T3 and also the DFSK EC35, seem very compelling from a cost savings perspective. What is stopping more companies and businesses in Singapore from adopting them now?
Number one, there's always a fear about electrification. It's new. Yes, it's new. The vehicles have been out for about 1.5 years, but they've been performing pretty well. You can always come over to any one of our locations and come for a test drive, and we will explain a little bit more. So, number one, we always have the fear of the unknown. Electrification is new. So, there's always fear. The second thing has been charging infrastructure. A lot of people have always wondered and asked us, I charge how? I charge at home. How do I charge? How can I charge? Our simple answer is this. We've paired up with a company called Quick Charge to help ease the transition to enable you to have a cost-efficient installation of a charger at your home or at your workplace. So our partner company, Quick Charge, can assist you in the installation of the chargers. If you do not want to install the chargers at your office premise or your home, the other alternative is public charging is actually available. So these are the public chargers which are readily available. You'll see that SP has quite a lot of charging stations around Singapore, And another partner that we use, Shell, has a lot of DC chargers around Singapore. These are two different types of charging. Regular charging on a commercial vehicle is usually about 6.6 kilowatts an hour. Yes, it's not very fast, but I'll come to that on this and that on regular charging. But a lot of these commercial vehicles will be using DC charging, direct charging, quick charging. It will charge the vehicle very quickly. Most of Shell's chargers are at 50 kilowatts an hour. So if you consider that this vehicle has a battery of under 40 kilowatts and is able to drive about 280 kilometers, that's got a 50 kilowatt battery and able to drive the same amount of distance. Both of them have normal charging and quick charging ports. So it can be quick charged. These are the two usual things which are slowing people down. The other thing was utilization. Does it work for me? Is it too big? Is it too small? These two by itself already fulfill most of people's van needs. What's missing? The electric lorry. Singapore uses a lot of lorries, and thanks to this brand of DFSK, we hope to introduce the first electric lorry into Singapore in January. It's also from DFSK. The model number is EC31.
Some business owners may say, yes, there's fast charging, but fast charging would still take 1.5 hours to get a full battery, whereas a petrol is just a 5-minute petrol stop. What will you say to those concerns?
Two things. One, because this vehicle has a slightly smaller battery at only 40 kilowatts. So if you do your math, 40 kilowatts of a battery, which is actually 38 point something, a 10-minute quick charge or DC charge will give you approximately 90 kilometers of drive in just 10 minutes. The second thing is, yes, you need to spend a little bit more time, but I think when you dangle the idea of saving $70,000 over a 7-8 year period, I think that justifies a little bit of time.
One big thing that EVs are also known for, especially Teslas, that they're the safest vehicles in the world. So when it comes to commercial EVs, like these two vans here, how would their safety stack versus their ICE counterparts?
I think our Singapore government would not allow these vehicles to be registered in Singapore if they were unsafe. All the vehicles have to go through a stringent homologation series before they are allowed to be registered in Singapore. In fact, these are being delivered all throughout Europe now. So if they can be registered in Europe as well, I don't see it as supposedly being unsafe. Yes, I understand that people would have concerns saying that Chinese vehicle, safe, not safe. But if this Chinese vehicle now is able to be sold in Europe, I think that should explain it that it's not unsafe.
Yes, and also all Teslas sold in Singapore today are made in China, Gigafactory Shanghai models. So the perception of made in China is slowly shifting, kind of like how made in Japan shifted from the 50s and the 60s as well.
Yes, I would agree. China is undoubtedly the manufacturing hub of, I guess, the whole world. Almost everything in one form or another is produced there. And it can only get better.
Almost 100,000 light commercial vehicles in Singapore right now, and most of the fleets are still petrol diesel vehicles. What's your take on how quickly we're going to electrify the segment?
Government's given this 30,000 rebate for commercial vehicles. It lasts about 3 years. What happens after 3 years, we don't know. Number one, the rebate's interesting. First time you see the government actually giving so much money and trying to influence the change from ICE to electric. We will dwell into the percentage because if you do a calculation, Singapore's carbon dioxide pollution for automotive vehicles in totality is 6.4 million tons. If all the light vehicles, including taxis, private commercial vehicles, buses, they get changed to all electrified, I think you bring that down to, I think, about 2 million tons, which means minimum there's a 4 million ton savings. That 4 million ton savings actually equates to 4% of Singapore's CO2 pollution output. So that's actually a very good savings. That's something which the government, I believe, is trying to help ourselves and the world live longer in a safer environment. The other thing the government has been doing to help everyone is tenders have been released for electrification of car parks. So there are a lot of car parks which are being electrified in the HDB, JTC, a lot of places all around. The private sector, on the other hand, you look at how fast Shell and SP and the private sectors of quick charge are trying to get DC chargers as well as normal chargers out to the public. It's coming. It's a lot. It will help. The downside of it is, well, with all this changing, you might see everyone switching to electric. Then people who still have a petrol heart or a love for petrol ICE vehicles might cry if they see $10 per litre come up from the petrol station someday, including me. I will also cry. But it's inevitable.
It's pretty crazy how 5 years ago you asked, are EVs inevitable in Singapore, and people would have very mixed answers. Today, I think it's almost entirely certain. There was a recent Ernst & Young survey showing that 55% of Singaporeans now would buy an EV as their next car. And that number has actually went up quite significantly just from a year ago. By the end of 2022, the number is going to be probably closer to 70 to 80% of Singaporeans going to buy an EV as the next vehicle. So that shift is coming really quickly. A follow-up question, Edward. In some countries like the UK, where they're phasing out petrol cars in 2030, Singapore is phasing out petrol cars in 2040. So in UK, all new commercial and also residential buildings must have EV charging. Do you see that being introduced in Singapore eventually? What's your take?
I don't think the government needs to push. I don't think we need the government to push that or to legislate it. But what would help, because it is already being done in quite a lot of commercial buildings as well as residential buildings. Everybody wants to have minimum just one charger down there, just to try, just to see whether it works. Okay, we're having some issues with MCST and some other things about that, but that's because of the legislation. So if government could help push speed, move that a little bit, that would help, because that would come. But I believe it's already on its way. Everybody that we talk to has been influenced, touched, or interested to understand more about electrification of their homes and their vehicles. So charging place, where to charge, and then to get the car. More people are interested? Yes, especially when they read all the stories about the cost savings. Commercial vehicles are the ultimate because they're on the road 150 kilometers a day. A passenger vehicle is 20,000, civilian passenger vehicle 20,000 kilometers, including some drives from Malaysia. I think the only thing that may hinder would probably be, is Malaysia going to have charging facilities for us to drive up to Malaysia, to KL, or further. That's going to come. We see it on the news, it will come. But for us right now, when we drive predominantly in Singapore, the cost savings, when you do the calculation, it's there, it's good. Not all electric vehicles have to be expensive. There are some other electric cars which are inexpensive. So explore, understand, go for a test drive and try. You might fall in love with it sooner than you think. That's why for us, we started with ICE, as we call it, the small little red car, which is the Mondale and the rest of the Ferraris. Then down to Teslas, which we're doing the lease to own programs, and now to DFSK for electrification. But it doesn't stop there. You've got electric commercial vehicles. You're going to have the electric lorry from us come January. And perhaps soon after that, we'll have another batch of cars. I'm just hiding behind the monitor, the picture there, of another batch of cost-effective electric vehicles. Series and DFSK are basically the same company. Therefore, we are bringing both models in. It's commercial for DFSK, and the passenger series is series. We should have a 3 and a 5, but more information on this when we release it later part of this year. But in the meantime, we do have something which we are trying to launch soon. Because our idea is to go green, electrification, it's something and where we want to be. This is Silence. It's a Spanish-made electric scooter.
And tell us more, because there are more than 200,000 motorcycles in Singapore, and most of them are still petrol driven. I don't think we've seen much, if any, EV motorcycles yet.
True. If we think that electric commercial vehicles are in its infancy, this is just starting to come out. Why this? Because we have a need for a small personal vehicle to move things like postal services, letters, couriers, last mile food delivery. This is homologated in Europe as an electric scooter. It does not have a restriction on highways. It can go onto the highways, have speeds above 90 kilometers an hour, has a battery pack of 5 kilowatts, has a range of over 100 kilometers, and has a lot of safety features and has a lot of cost savings for the user. It's an electric scooter that's comfortable and easy to ride every day. So for the people who are doing the last mile deliveries, especially the food delivery people or small couriers, we are starting to bring this particular vehicle in with the permission of LTA using a sandbox project so that it can help us here in Singapore. A lot of our motorcycles tend to be a little bit older right now in the market. This should revolutionize that particular industry because it's cost effective, it's usable, it's safe, and it's very good with fleet management already built into it.
Now I'm going to close with a few quick fire questions for Edward to get to know him a little better.
Shoot, ask.
We know that Edward has a passion for driving, sailing, and photography. So, favorite sail destination?
Favorite sail destination, surprisingly, is not overseas in my mind. The best destination which took my breath away was actually in Malaysia, in Redang, because number one, the company was fantastic, the friends I had on that trip, and number two, the waters were unbelievably clear, and it's something which I expected in Europe, not something that I expected so close to home. Therefore, for me, it was magical, it was special, and it's different. Sure, you can find waters like that in Maldives and everywhere else, but so close to home, lesser discovered, quiet and relaxable, that made for a very interesting destination.
That is a gift.
And it's close to home.
Yes. So we normally always hype for the things that are so far away, distant places, but there's a great richness as close as Redang, which is, how long would it take to get there?
A day and a half, you'll be there with a good boat and a good team. It's not very far. That's why I find interesting places near home, places where you don't expect it. And I think that's magical because these are places in our own backyard and we're living here. If we don't explore and we don't know them, then we have to go overseas to find something similar. I think it's a waste. We should know our own backyard before we travel everywhere else.
Agree. And with all these hidden gems and all these magical moments, how do you choose to capture all these moments on camera? What do you use?
Okay, because I'm not exactly the youngest kid on the block. My digital camera, which I carry with me all the time, is a Sony RX1R Mark II. But I have a passion for film photography because I've been doing it since I was in primary school. So my favorite cameras happen to be Leica M's. So I've got a lot of Leica M series lenses. And the thing about them is it's special because when you're running film, what you see is what you get. There's nothing which can manipulate it at all. So it's down to the quality of the lens itself. You can't bullshit it. What you see is what you get. So with fantastic quality of like a M glass on film, I think that's an additional passion.
And what genre of photography? Landscape, street, car photography?
All of it. I do like people photography, being able to capture people quietly because the M is so quiet, and with that color, with that difference, it's magical. When you take a nice picture of people in their comfort surroundings and them being unaware that you took it and you can give it to them, it's something magical.
Thank you for sharing. And what's one advice you have for aspiring entrepreneurs? I believe this is now a third generation company.
For businesses to succeed in this age, embrace that change is always there. Nothing is constant. Learn whenever you can, because we should learn until the day we return our ID, and have passion in what you are doing and learning. Without these three things, or understanding of these three things, we can't survive, we can't live, we can't go on. We'll be in a fixed cycle. So embrace these three and enjoy life.
Last question, favorite comfort food?
I'm overweight. I've got too many comfort foods, from char kway teow down to Hokkien mee, down to bak kut teh. There's too much. Even enjoying food from Spain, where I just came back from, or because we travel to Italy so much, Italian food.
And as we close, many are curious, and I want your take. I asked many of my guests, what year do you think would EVs outsell petrol cars in Singapore?
I would say that within 10 years, we should be able to see a 1-for-1 on it. The rationale why I say that is because of the cost effectiveness of production. So I would say in about 10 years. Right now, a lot of people still follow herd mentality of wanting the ICE cars, and because we have a 10-year COE in Singapore. So in order for all this to run its course, I would say approximately 10 years. Some other countries might be a little bit faster, but I think it'll be about right for Singapore. But I believe that electric commercial vehicles, especially in the category that we're in, will be a lot faster than that because of the cost efficiencies. And all you have to do is look at how much the savings are. It's definitely worth it. And it's now, not in the future. It's here now, the cost savings. So why not embrace it?
So within the next 10 years, we're going to see a lot more EVs sold than petrol cars. I'm a little bit more optimistic. I think, at least for most of Singapore, I think it's by 2025, we'll see an inflection point. More than half of the vehicles sold will be EVs. Let's see. And
I hope so too.
That's going to be lots of headroom and also growth runway for your business in the transition from ICE to EVs. Thank you for sharing your company's story. Thank you for sharing your motivations as well, and also giving a tour of all the different vehicles that have been in Hong Sei's past, present, and future.
Thank you very much, and I hope to see you soon again.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
If you found this video useful, please click the like button. Hit subscribe to stay updated with more videos like this. Take care and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.